You're lying in bed. It's dark. You hear a sound downstairs that you can't quite place. Your heart rate spikes before your brain even finishes the thought, probably nothing. You lie completely still, listening, every muscle tensed. Then you hear the fridge compressor kick on, and you feel like an idiot. Snorts, that whole sequence, the spike, the stillness, the ridiculous anticlimax, took about 4 seconds. Your ancestors had that exact same sequence too. Except for them, the sound downstairs was real a lot more often than yours is. And the thing that terrified them most wasn't what you'd guess. It wasn't lions. It wasn't snakes. It wasn't even the dark itself. What actually kept your ancestors up at night is stranger, more specific, and honestly, still living rent-free in your nervous system right now. Let's start with what fear researchers actually know, because the popular version of this story, cavemen were scared of predators, is only partially right and misses the far more interesting answer. Psychologist Martin Seligman developed something called preparedness theory in the 1970s, based on a strange observation. Modern humans develop intense phobias of snakes and spiders at a much higher rate than we develop phobias of objectively more dangerous things: cars, electrical outlets, guns. Seligman's explanation was that evolution pre-wires certain fears into us because those specific threats killed our ancestors reliably enough, over a long enough time frame, that the fear became baked into the genome itself. You don't have to learn to fear a snake the hard way. Some version of that fear is already installed. But here's where it gets more interesting than just snakes are scary. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer, HRDY, and primatologist Robert Sapolsky have both pointed to something that ranks even higher on the ancient fear hierarchy than predators. And it's going to sound almost too simple to be true. Ambiguity. Not the lion itself. The uncertainty about whether there is a lion. Think about why that makes sense if you actually sit with it. A lion in plain sight mid-charge triggers a fear response, sure, but it also triggers a clear behavioral script. Run, climb, throw something, fight. Your body knows exactly what to do because the threat is fully resolved into information. But a rustling in the grass at dusk, when you can't tell if it's wind or a gazelle or the exact animal that could kill you, that produces a different, more corrosive kind of fear. One with no resolution. One your body can't fully act on because it doesn't know which action to take yet. Sapolsky's research on stress physiology found that unpredictable, ambiguous threats produce a longer, more sustained cortisol response than clear, resolved ones. A lion you can see and run from spikes your stress, and then lets you recover once you're safe. A sound you can't identify keeps your stress system activated because your brain refuses to stand down until the ambiguity resolves one way or the other. For your ancestors, living in landscapes where visibility was often limited, dense grass, thick brush, deep shadow at dawn and dusk, ambiguous threat was not the occasional problem. It was the daily condition. Now picture this. It's dusk, the most dangerous window of the day, when visibility drops fast and most large predators become active. A small group is walking back toward camp, and someone stops. Not because they've seen anything, because they heard something. A specific tonal shift in the birds nearby went quiet all at once, and everyone in the group feels it before anyone says a word. Nobody's laughing right now. Nobody's making a joke about it, because the joke, if there was one, gets made after, once everyone's safely back and someone can finally say out loud, "I genuinely thought that was it." And the whole group actually laughs a little too hard. The specific kind of laugh that only happens after your body finally lets go of a threat that turned out to be nothing. That release valve, the laughing after moment, isn't a modern invention either. It shows up across documented hunter-gatherer accounts as a near-universal social response to resolved false alarms. The tension has to go somewhere once it's confirmed safe, and laughter is apparently one of the oldest tools your nervous system has for discharging it. This is where the story gets genuinely strange, because that unresolved threat response didn't require anything to actually be there. Anthropologists studying the Jew/Hoansi Sen people documented something researchers now call the watching feeling, a persistent, low-grade sense of being observed that trackers reported experiencing constantly, even in areas with no confirmed predator activity. Some of that feeling turned out to be accurate, genuine subtle cues their conscious mind hadn't fully processed yet. But some of it was simply the ambiguity detection system running as a background process, all the time, whether or not anything was actually out there. Living permanently inside that system wasn't a malfunction. It was the correct operating setting for an environment where the cost of a false negative, assuming nothing's there when something actually is was so much higher than the cost of a false positive. Here's the part that should genuinely land differently once you think about your own life through this lens. You almost never face an actual lion, but you face ambiguity constantly, and your body still treats it exactly the way it treated a rustle in the grass 100,000 years ago. The text message that says, "We need to talk," with zero other information attached. The unread email from your boss sitting in your inbox for 4 hours before you open it. The silence after you say something in a group chat and nobody responds for a while. None of those things are predators. All of them trigger the exact same unresolved threat circuitry, the same refusal to stand down until the ambiguity clears one way or the other. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux, who has spent decades studying fear circuitry in the brain, found that the amygdala responds more intensely to ambiguous threat cues than to clearly identified ones, precisely because ambiguity requires more processing resources to evaluate. Your brain essentially treats, "I don't know what that is yet," as more dangerous than, "I know exactly what that is and it's bad." Because not knowing means you can't yet select the correct response. That's not a modern glitch. That's the exact same system that kept a small group of humans alive at dusk on an African savanna, just now firing off at a notification icon instead of a shift in birdsong. So when you feel that specific low-grade dread of an unanswered message, or the tension of walking into a room where the conversation just stopped, you're not being irrational. You're running software that was optimized over hundreds of thousands of years for exactly this kind of situation: resolve the ambiguity, or stay activated until you can. The problem is that modern ambiguity rarely resolves as cleanly or as quickly as a rustle in the grass turning out to be wind. Your inbox can stay ambiguous for hours. Your ancestors' rustling grass usually resolved itself within about 90 seconds, one way or the other. That night, back at camp, once everyone's laughed off the false alarm and the fire's going, nobody explains what just happened to the kids watching quietly nearby. They don't need to. The kids are already learning the same lesson their bodies will carry for the rest of their lives, that the feeling of not knowing is its own kind of threat, worth taking seriously, worth staying alert for, right up until the exact moment it resolves. You will probably feel that exact same specific dread today. Maybe it's a message. Maybe it's a look someone gave you that you can't quite read. It will feel small, almost embarrassing to admit out loud. But somewhere underneath it is the same system that once kept a group of your ancestors frozen at dusk, waiting to find out if the silence in the grass meant nothing, or meant everything. If you want more stories like this, ones that dig into what's actually still running underneath modern behavior, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps this kind of storytelling keep reaching people. See you in the next one.